I have no conflict of interest to disclose. The 3 learning objectives for my talk are to discuss how to identify incidents and explore an understanding of why they occur, to examine the tools to be used in the process, and offer practical advice on how to implement. An accident is the sum of multiple failures, and a chain of aligned events can create an incident or an accident. And you can see here the Swiss cheese model of safety incidents. So there are 2 links which are good articles to read and understand better how a failure at multiple levels will inevitably result in a catastrophic incident. But most importantly, we need to understand that timely intervention can be employed if the pre-incidents or pre-accidents are identified and prevented from reoccurring. So, firstly, before one goes about implementing safety in the unit, first step is to identify current safety concerns and address them. So start with all the incidents and accidents currently reported, create a team that analyzes and proposes solutions, create standard operating procedures to address the concerns, and communicate findings and changes proposed to all staff. And the first step in doing so is establishing a safety-first culture. There is no place for blame. It should be backed by a no-blame philosophy to ensure buy-in from staff. Remember the landing in New York. Pilot Captain Sullenberger, he said, blame is the enemy of safety. It misses the opportunity to learn. So staff must be presented with a vision, the details, and the implementation of this safety-first culture. You can have a motto like, our patients and staff safety comes first, and one has to teach, train, and regularly assess staff. I think the 4 principles are: to err is human. To take steps in preventing errors is a duty for all of us. To identify sentinel incidents is wise and should be rewarded. And to openly discuss an error is real transparency. Once we like to implement safety, we need to understand that each process in the unit has to have a standard operating procedure. So, implementing protocols to deal with all areas of activity is crucial. What is written stands. For that reason, there should be only one version of a document. The SOPs need to be easily accessible and followed by all staff, as they reduce omissions and errors. And each service should record when SOPs need updating, and thus they need to be reviewed regularly. I'm giving you here some examples. You can have standard operating procedures for the maintenance of equipment. For example, you can have standard operating procedures of the weighing scales in the laboratory. You can have standard operating procedures for certifying staff and also recording that they are certified. And you can have standard operating procedures and regulation of how do we sterilize an incubator, for example. So they're all clearly documented with the latest version available. So now that we have this in place and an incident occurs, the question that comes to mind is what tools we have to assess this incident. So I will cover 2 aspects here: incident analysis and continuous learning and improvement, with process assessment and service mapping. This is a fishbone diagram, also called Ishikawa diagram, and it's helping to identify risk, particularly potential causes of a specific event. So, for example, contaminated samples placed in a non-infectious tank. And you can see multiple aspects are looked at: equipment, the process, the people, materials involved, environment management, and so on. And there are the large arrows, which are the primary cause, and the smaller arrows, which are the secondary causes. And we need to identify all this that resulted in a problem. So the root cause analysis as such will ask specific questions like, what is the process? Was each step in the process followed? Where did the first error occur? Were there more than one? And what can be done to prevent future occurrence? So firstly, we need to describe the event with a date, location, who was involved, the details of what happened on the day, the harm that resulted, and was any cause easily identified. So for example, let me take you through this example that I created, where firstly, the issue details. The date reported, the 10th of October, it was an embryo transfer incident. The issue to report, wrong embryo was transferred. The source, laboratory reported the transfer of an embryo that belonged to another couple to the wrong couple. How critical is this event? A very critical, high. Justification. The two couples that had embryo transfer that day received each other's embryos. If a pregnancy establishes, they could have the baby of the other couple. So how do we go about the possible root cause? Firstly, we need to ask what exactly happened. This was an official holiday. There were two embryologists scheduled to work, but one became violently sick that morning and could not attend until later in the day after she recovered. The witnessing process was performed by one embryologist. The nurses did bring the second couple to have the transfer first, as the first couple were late attending. The first and second couple had identical surnames. So what is the probability that this error could occur? I think it can be high in similar circumstances. So what solutions can we produce? Well, firstly, staff shortages must be aggressively managed and actively delayed if possible, and activity delayed if possible. So we can delay or postpone the transfer to a second person comes in the laboratory. Secondly, any unit staff, including a nurse, a doctor, and even an assistant, can double up as a witness. Just the fact that an embryologist is not present in the laboratory doesn't mean we cannot have a second witness. If a change in the transfer order occurs, all staff must be informed about this occurrence. And possibly crucially, couples with identical surnames or first names should be given spaced appointments, not one after the other. So I think this process facilitates learning from these reported events. Thus, all reports must be analyzed and lesson learned. Preventing major errors can start by learning from the small ones and avoid accumulating errors. Remember the Swiss cheese model? The mindset is created from learning from major events, and it's sharpened by learning from the small ones on a regular basis. So here we should employ the 5 whys when we analyze an event. And here you can see a root cause analysis template that says, you find the problem, and when you analyze the problem, why is this happening? The primary cause, why is it happening? Well, it's possibly happening because the order of transfer was swapped. Why is that? Excuse me. Why is that? Is the second question. So why is that? Is because somebody did not turn up for a transfer, so the second couple were taking first. And why is that? Because somebody decided that's what is to happen. And we keep asking the question, why is that? As long as there is a controllable solution to the question. And then, as you can see, there are corrective actions that can be taken and then implemented and completion. So these are the 5 whys. You have to keep asking the question, why? So it is essential that staff are encouraged to report even minor events. And this is done by reinforcing the no blame principle and the benefits to patients and the practice. This near misses left alone in time will create a bigger problem. And we have to acknowledge that it is the system that it is faulty. But humans can only improve it if risks are identified. So ultimately, one would aim to identify risk before they become incidents. So think risk, think prevent. Identify those hazards and report all those near misses. So for example, nobody to witness semen preparation. Wrong semen sample used to perform IUI. No backup theater suction pump. I would love to know how many units have a backup suction pump in theater. If the one breaks, how do you take out the follicular fluid? Oocyte retrieval has to be abandoned in those cases. IT system hacked. This is a serious concern. You have no access to patient information in the middle of their cycle of treatment. So for that, we need to see the bigger picture because there are multiple areas where safety must be maintained. It's patient, staff, reproductive material stored, the tools we use in our daily process, IT, equipment, and so on, and our business partners, suppliers, and so on. So I'm not going to insist too much on the list, which you'll see in a moment, but I'm just going to present to you how you can use a diagram to actually identify what happens in your service. So you can see here from the environment, methods, machinery used, the human, and so on, providing a very lengthy and contorted patient journey sometimes. And everything in red are things that we could actually act upon and change and make better. So this is not an incident, it's just an analysis of the services.
Okay.
So to come back at potential areas on the clinical side, things like a patient falling, an electronic file being hacked, firewalls being broken, patient registration, taking the wrong photograph of the wrong patient or importing the photograph attached to the wrong name, information provision, one thing is said to a patient, another thing is said to somebody else, and so on and so forth, including certification of staff, theater equipment, as we said, second pump, including resuscitation, having the equipment, the trained staff, and the medication, the wrong information printed for the patients, including witnessing at the time of egg collection, transfer, HCG administration, and protocol for progesterone, and so on. But things like force majeure, what do you do in a fire or an earthquake or an explosion incident? And of course, the partners. And similarly, you can think about the laboratory, and I will not read this because this presentation is recorded, so you can peruse it at ease. But again, what do you do with material if there is a force majeure situation in your unit? And also administration. An incident is if fees are not collected. An incident is, as I said, wrong photograph in the chart. An incident could be all the information disappears because somebody erases the database or hackers take out the information. And last but not least, I think we have a duty to look and insist on encouraging regular feedback from pregnant couples because the health of the next generation, now this children can see from us, could be a situation of risk. So we need to learn from the outcomes and investigate patients thoroughly to understand risk many times, even before they start. And here we're thinking genetic diseases that can be passed to the next generation. The next 2 or 3 slides are just showing how you can process map and adopt a preventive approach by analyzing every steps of an intervention in the unit, by designing better patient flow, by documenting new SOPs, and by managing a process through continuous improvement. And this is a flow chart that you can do for every service provided in your unit. I'm giving you an example here. This is the IVF laboratory. You can see specimen is received, semen specimen, and then collection hatch at the bottom here, sample transfer to lab. And what happens with those samples up to the level of the embryo transferred by the clinician to the patient? And there are 2 lines at the bottom. One is in pink and one is in green. And the one in green says value added. And the one in pink says non-value added. And you can see how much time is wasted with non-value interventions in this process. The value added is only 1/3 of the whole process. So we can streamline this and make it far more efficient, reducing the possibility for incidents here. Similarly, I'm sure that all laboratories will have a quality master plan, and this is what I'm presenting here, where you can have a very specific table with defined parameters, which are in green and achieved, and then in orange, somewhere in between, and in red, this is a situation where parameters have fallen below. And is this an incident? Well, I would say it is, because if we continue the downward path, the results will start plummeting. Similarly, you can observe this in this control chart or Shewhart chart that gives us information about fertilization rates, embryo utilization rates, positive pregnancy tests, but also incubator performance, temperature, CO2, culture media variation like temperature, pH, oxygen concentration, and they are very valuable. So, ladies and gentlemen, I say that self-improvement is a matter not only of regulatory safety, imposed safety, but also the drive from within to avoid incidents, aiming to understand the business inside out, desiring to improve continuously and be ahead in risk thinking, and making it everybody's business to identify risk and ensure safety before risks become events. And of course, we need to learn from each other, from regulators, from equipment manufacturers, from collaborating services, from patients, legal entities, and of course, society at large. So today I discussed with you how to look at incidents and what tools we have in bettering our services. But I will summarize in saying that successful implementation of these measures is a lifelong fun. So we discussed how to identify these risks, set safety objectives, write safety policies, establish the risk management processes, train all staff, and ensure shared responsibility and pride. And I think that we need to develop leaders that see safety as the initial and ultimate goal, beginning with the end in mind. So I think the services we offer our patients will change from offering the right expertise for the achievement of a pregnancy in the most efficient, safe, and cost-effective way for both the couple and the clinic, to facilitating the conception of a healthy child with the smallest risk to the couple. And with that, I'd like to say thank you to all. I'm delighted to be present again at the Egyptian annual meeting. And just to introduce to you the IFFS 24th World Congress, which will happen in Athens, 3rd to the 6th of April 22, is the very first large global fertility meeting, and we look forward to seeing the Egyptian practitioners there. Thank you.